Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Thunderstorm podcast. This time around, we're trying to get in control of our lives. And by that I mean, we're going to talk for probably a bit too long about our favorite controllers. Which one's the best? Which one's the worst? Who has some spicy controller takes to share with us all? I'm Rin, and this time around, I am joined by Kaznarius.
How well can I shove this controller up my ass? That is the question.
Sliv,
The
the pork chopper,
Hi.
and as always, the unnamed guest.
Okay, let's go fast.
I get the feeling we should preface this by saying that Sliv has decided to get amazingly high for this podcast.
Yes.
So, gentlemen, let's get right into it. What is your favorite controller, and furthermore, why is it your favorite?
Switch Pro controller. I had a lot of hype for the Nintendo Switch, and those Joy-Cons are shit. I really, really fucking hate Joy-Cons. I'm a huge fan of gimmicks, and I thought I'd really like them, and I did for a little while. And then Drift happened, and then I bought more, and Drift happened. And for me, the Pro controller, it's like a better version of the Wii U Pro controller, which was already pretty good. It's got better rumble. It's got like a solid grip to it. I like that it's weighty, and most importantly, I don't have to play with fucking Joy-Cons. I love that controller. As an aside, it's like my favorite console ever to just like bring over to somebody's house because it's so compact and I can have it all in one little box and have like two really good controllers in one little box. Yeah, I really like the Switch Pro controller. That's me.
I think I'm a little bit jaded about the Switch Pro controller personally, just because I got a Wii U Pro controller and I wanted to keep using it. And Nintendo had been pretty good about supporting their older controllers as they went up to the next generation, like in more modern day. So I was I was really disappointed that my Wii U Pro controller just didn't work on the Switch. And oh, by the way, here's this controller that's twice the price you can buy now. I was a little bit miffed about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I still don't have a official Switch Pro controller. I only have had third-party ones. So but I see why like people love them. Every time I've used them, I'm like, man, I gotta get me one of these, and then I just don't because they're too expensive.
In spite of it being a Switch product, it feels very not cheap, and that's why I like it so much.
Yeah, it feels like classic Nintendium build quality. I'm actually using right now I'm using a third-party Switch Pro controller that's like this. They're kind of like smaller than normal, which is funny because I have like actually really big hands, but it actually does feel good in the hands. And it's like this Hori pad with a Pikachu and Eevee on it, and I like it a lot.
You couldn't go one fucking episode. You couldn't go one fucking episode.
Anyway.
Saying that fucking word the wrong way.
Anyway. How about you, Sliv?
10 out of 10 Atari 2600 controller.
Oh, hell
Easy
yeah.
to remember. Like, it's move and do thing. Perfection. Never got better than that.
Straight up your ass.
I think it's gotten a little bit better than the 2600 controller, my guy.
Best part about the 2600 controller, even if I were to shove it up my ass, I could still use the whole controller.
That is a yikes and a half.
Rock forward and back and jump.
Oh god. Oh no.
Wait, how are you pressing the button? Oh.
You jump.
That's what you're holding on to.
Oh.
My boy's bottoming out the controller.
So sorry, so you're saying that the Atari invented, like, VR motion controls long ago?
And inspired Bad Dragon.
That was a concerning.
I'm
I'm never playing Atari with you ever again.
You've never played Atari.
I'm never smelling your controllers ever again.
And never licking your cartridges ever again.
For me, it's kind of a tie because I have two controllers that are really, really great in different ways. One of them, like you guys can probably assume, is the Xbox Series X controller because it is really comfortable. The rumble triggers are surprisingly good when they're done right in games like Forza, where you can feel the road. But the other one is the Switch Pro controller because I think that's actually the most comfortable controller I've ever used. The only thing I hate about that is that the triggers are digital, they're not analog, which is really fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like you can't have a proper racing game. That's why there aren't very many racing games coming out on the Switch, because your gas would literally be on and off.
It also really messed up when they did the Mario 3D All-Stars, the flood controls, because in Mario Sunshine, flood would, based off the pressure you were giving with the right trigger, because the GameCube controller has analog triggers, it didn't work properly, so you had a lot of issues where they kind of tried to change it a little bit, but it just didn't. I imagine, like, if I had played the game for the first time, it might have been a little bit better, but it was really disorienting, and it really hurt my ability to play that game on the Switch.
Yeah. Like, I can understand why the Joy-Cons had digital triggers, but there was no reason. Like, if you're paying, like here in Canada, I believe the Pro Controller's $89.99. If I'm spending that much money on the controller, it should have analog triggers. That's like such a standard feature to have. But yeah, that's the one major gripe I have with that controller. So for any kind of game where the triggers really matter, I prefer the Xbox controller because it's just better in that regard.
I think my two favorites, because I do have two that are very close, I think I give like an honorable mention to the Xbox 360 controller because it is really solid. It is a perfect jack of all trades controller. It's good at just about everything. It runs on AA, so I don't have to worry about like the batteries eventually expiring and not being able to find replacements. I mean, I can still use it on Windows 10 with a bit of chicanery.
Yeah.
I really like the 360 controller. I still use one when I'm doing PC gaming and I'm using a controller for it because it's just, I like that controller so much. But I think my favorite, and I'm probably a little bit biased, but it's the GameCube controller.
Oh yeah.
I love that controller. Definitely because I played so much Smash Bros. It's not perfect. I don't like the Z button very much because it's just kind of useless. And the D-pad's also kind of not the best, but for everything else, it is the most comfortable controller I've ever used. I love it for, like, 3D platformers. I love it for, you know, Smash Bros, obviously. It is a really lovely controller, and it's such a shame that not more games supported on the Switch, actually, because I want to use my adapter to play more games with the GameCube controller.
I think from a purely nostalgia point of view, my favorite controller is still the Nintendo 64 controller. Like, I never got Mario Party, so it was never ruined for me. Like, all those kids fucked up their hands. You know, I never got, like, a situation where the stick fucked up on me. I was weirdly kind of gentle with them as a kid. Figured that one out. It's kind of neat to see a company innovate with their controller design before everything ended up homogenizing, like the way it was basically from GameCube, PS2 generation onwards. I will fully admit that it is not the most optimal design, but I still love that there are 3 ways to play with that controller, and yeah, I think it's still pretty cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. There's so many ways you can use the N64 controller. Am I right, guys?
Yeah.
I don't really have one because I'm really not picky about my controllers, as long as they work. Broken controllers are very annoying. So essentially, there are like, I thought about this. There are like 3 categories that I would say are kind of the best, and they're best at different things. For most like general third-person action platformer, whatever, just any modern controller will be fine. Like the PlayStation, the Xbox, the Switch Pro, none of them are different enough for me to care. There are differences, and you can have some, but I believe like whether you like one above the other is mostly a preference thing. Outside of that analog trigger thing, I actually completely forgot that the Switch Pro doesn't have those. That is kind of a defect. I'm not sure how you really improve on those outside of, I don't know, you somehow find ways to add more buttons, but I don't even think we really need more buttons. So yeah, modern controllers are good, and they're better than pretty much anything older than them for the most part. And then for things like shooters, the mouse and keyboard is the best for it, really. I don't really like playing shooters with a controller anymore. I don't know if that technically counts in this conversation, but I'm saying it anyway.
I was going to actually bring it up. Is a mouse and keyboard considered a controller? Because it is a way you can play a game.
Yes.
And I agree.
Then we also have to include things like flight sticks and fucking steering wheels because you can control games too.
I mean,
Well,
those are controllers.
Those are controllers.
That was going to be my third thing. My third thing was going to be situational controllers, which are generally custom made for like the game in question. So like if you are doing like a flight simulator, you'd probably want something like a flight stick, not just a normal controller. A lot of people who play fighting games prefer the like arcade cabinet fight stick over a gamepad. And I think that's more of a preference thing than anything else, but some people think they get an advantage out of it, so all the power to them. Stuff like Guitar Hero or DDR, it doesn't feel right if you were playing it on a normal controller. You need the stupid peripheral controller.
Disagree entirely, because I really like playing DDR by putting my fucking controller on the ground and smashing into it with my feet.
Not everyone's a goddamn masochist.
There's obviously going to be some level of preference somewhere. But I think on a general objective level, modern controllers are as good as we're getting. I don't know how to improve it. I think that's a more interesting question, is how do we improve the modern controller design?
I can tell you like a really easy way.
Okay, I'm curious.
So you had mentioned that you don't think controllers need more buttons. I think they actually do.
Okay.
Because on PC, for example, like if you look at first-person shooters, you can lean left and right, whereas on controller, the only time you can do that is when a game limits the amount of functions it has so that it can free up buttons for lean. If you add grip controllers on the backs of the grips, then you could use those extra 2 buttons for things like that. Or you can even, I've seen controllers that have like 2 or 3 buttons on the backs of the grips, and you can kind of customize how you want to play. And it just, to me, that makes more sense. And I think in the next generation, we should have at least 2 buttons on the back.
Okay. You know, I didn't even think about, I don't play a lot of first person shooters, so I didn't even think about the leaning thing, but you are right. On a normal controller, they do have to restrict something in order to allow leaning.
Yeah.
Mind you, I also don't think people, like, if you're going to play first person shooter, you should just play it on mouse and keyboard. Not everyone can, so I agree that those things should be added, but still, it's still not the optimal way to play.
And I do know that there are some actually Switch third-party controllers that have two. I think there's probably third-party Xbox controllers as well that have two, like, their macro buttons, and you can map them to different things.
Yeah.
So, like, there are already controllers coming out with those 2 extra buttons, funny enough.
It's the first time I ever used grip buttons was with my Oculus, because they have the button so you can like grab stuff, and it's surprisingly intuitive to have buttons on the back. Like, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should go like full Jaguar and have a freaking phone number pad on the bottom of the controller.
Yeah, let's not do that. What do we want? The fucking chat pad from the 360 controller? I don't think we need that.
I don't know. I feel like controllers today are phoning it in a little bit too much.
No, when I'm playing fucking God of War, I don't need to be seeing popping up in front of me, oh, type in fucking like 8675309 or some shit. Like, we don't need none of that.
It'll be like the KFC console will have like a freaking phone attached to the controller, so that way you can call and order some freaking fried chicken straight.
Oh
to
yeah,
your
you can
goddamn
call
house.
and order your fried chicken while making your fried chicken.
You know, I will say, in the Deus Ex reboots, it was really fucking cool that you could type in like passcodes with the number pad on your keyboard. But I wouldn't want a fucking controller with that shit built in.
I think that every single controller should have you be able to remap the fucking share button. If I had a dime for the amount of times that somebody came over and used my controller to take 7,000 snapshots on my Switch Pro controller, or even like the PS4 controller, it's got that stupid ass share button that I hit like half the time just because I think it's like start. Like, it is so worthless to me.
As if I had a dime for every time I pressed my share button on purpose or accident, I'd have 3 dimes. So I don't know what's wrong with you.
I'm not saying it's a problem with me. I'm saying that people come over, use the fucking button, and just fucking hit it 20 times just to make a shit ton of useless
If you're getting a dime for every time it's pressed, why the fuck do you care?
I don't think that's how this works.
I know what you mean, because whenever my cousins come over to play Mario Party, every single time when someone's using the controller, they fucking mash the shit out of that when they're trying to hit everything else. And then the fucking system's got like 300 screenshots on it.
Just make it another start button. I can't believe that's not an option. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well, it's also where the select button used to be on all other controllers. I mean, the select button generally wasn't the most useful because it almost always was just basically a second start button. But yeah, no, the share button, I don't really like it, but that's because I generally don't take many screenshots of the game I'm playing or anything like that. So
yeah, I'll say that's one thing Xbox did right, is they still have the start and select buttons, and the share buttons in the middle of the controller, like out of the way of your thumbs.
yeah.
So you don't ever press that by accident.
And I will say, I never understood the DualShock 4, the big thing in the middle that you like can swipe and press, and no game is, no game has ever really used it that well, to the point in which it feels totally superfluous and stupid.
I use it when it's available, but like,
there are ways you could use it, but it's like, it's such a weird concept because you have to take your fingers or your thumbs off the controller to stop what you're doing to use the fucking touchpad.
I will agree that no game has really used it the right way. However, I think it's not that bad for keyboard controls.
That's fair, actually.
I think it's a lot more efficient to use that thing than it is to just manually hit the buttons. Like, I always find it way faster to use that for keyboard controls, where I'm not going to be using my normal like finger configuration anyway. I'm just gonna move my finger up and swipe with it.
I think like the worst thing when doing those is like when you typo, like you're putting in a password, you get one letter wrong, and now you have to go all the way to the other side of the freaking keyboard thing to backspace.
Yeah.
And like, I'm paranoid, so when I miss one, I'm like, oh god, I screwed the whole thing up. I have to backspace the entire password and start again.
Yeah, see, I've never had a problem with the virtual keyboards. I'm actually pretty good at typing with them, so I've never actually used the middle thing for that. I've never liked it.
Oh man, this sort of like unlocked a memory. Do you guys remember typing with the Wiimote for like the web browser and stuff?
Oh yeah.
No.
yeah, I remember using their Opera Mini or whatever it was. Fucking.
That was terrible.
Hey, we got onto Facebook with it back in the day. Somehow.
Yeah, but
What an achievement.
The Wiimote is such a weird controller to think about because it is a good controller, but it is totally non-standard compared to anything else out there that actually matters. Like, sure, the PlayStation Move exists, but no one cares.
Yeah, the Wiimote's alright for what it did. It had a little too, like, not enough buttons for the most part.
Yeah.
That caused some problems.
To the point you need the nunchuck.
Plus
Yeah.
and minus in weird spots. 1 and 2, you have to take your thumb away from A. It's kind of weird. Depending on your orientation.
Yeah, depending on how you're using it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're using an nunchuck, like, you're screwed.
It was surprisingly comfortable for, like, NES games and stuff, though, actually.
It was. Like, the buttons were a good distance apart.
You're probably more comfortable than using like a sideways Joy-Con.
Yeah.
I hate sideways Joy-Cons.
It is
The
kinda
fucking
painful.
worst.
I bought grips to use the Joy-Con sideways because it's so uncomfortable otherwise. But even then, if you're using the right Joy-Con, it still fucking sucks because the stick's in the middle.
I just shelled out the inordinate amount of money to get the NES controllers, so I can just use those instead.
Oh, fuck that.
I just use the Pro Controller.
The thing is, some games, like I think it's Mario Party, will not let you use the fucking Pro Controller.
Oh yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
It's- Nintendo's stupid.
Because you
There's
got a high
gimmicks that
five.
require the Joy-Con.
What?
There's gimmicks that would have required the Joy-Con, like high-fiving.
You can
Ugh.
still, the motion controls and the HD Rumble are all built in. The only thing that's not in the Pro Controller is, I believe, the IR sensor, which like no fucking game even uses. So there's no excuse to not let people use it.
Well, I mean, with Mario Party, I guess the whole thing is because you would be like waving the Joy-Con to do the high five motion. If you're waving the Pro Controller, you could actually, I guess, like the logic would be, I guess you could like launch your freaking controller and obliterate a child's face or something with it.
Take it.
I mean,
The controller, I mean, not the child. The controller would be just fine.
Yes, take the child.
Honestly, I've never accidentally thrown a controller in any way, really. The only time I've seen a controller thrown is Sliver. So
Hey, only went into your wall.
That sounds about right.
But like, I can see Nintendo being a little bit overcautious now after so many people put Wiimotes through their TVs.
that's fair. That is true.
Because that was like a huge deal when the Wii came out that people weren't using the wrist strap and just lobbing, like just going to bowl on Wii Sports and getting a little bit too enthusiastic and just chucking the friggin' thing straight through their brand new LCD TV.
Well, I mean, that's
Fuck
their
yeah.
fault. Nintendo
Yeah.
even put a warning to, always wear the wrist strap. So, fuck them. If you break your TV because you didn't follow the instructions, it's your own fault.
That's why we
feel
got.
like-
It's why we got the Wiimote condom.
If they were that worried about people throwing the controller, then the fucking straps for the Joy-Cons wouldn't have to be attached. They'd just be fucking built into the things.
Well, I think the Joy-Cons are just much lighter, so they're not as worried about it.
And also,
If you
the
fucking
Joy-Cons
throw that
have
shit
to.
at somebody's face, it's gonna hurt.
The
I know.
Joy-Cons also have to be portable, so like
That's
it kind of
true.
takes away a little bit of the portability if you have two things dangling off the system at all times.
Oh yeah, they're worried about portability. That's why you have to take your phone and need all that fucking shit to do voice chat and everything while you're out and about.
What,
Listen,
you guys
no
don't
one
have
said
phones?
Nintendo was smart. We're trying to think of why Nintendo did it. Not that
Yeah.
Nintendo was smart about doing it. I agree that, if they really cared, they would have had those attached. And if they cared about portability,
Yeah.
they would make better systems. But, whatever. Fuck Nintendo. Fuck the Switch. God. Just make a good console, not this underpowered garbage.
The Switch is a good console. It's
I
just
like it.
not in terms of raw power.
Yeah.
And that holds it back in a lot of aspects.
Like the controllers being too small.
Oh, yeah, that's really bad.
Because you
Oh,
have
no.
big meaty claws. It's not.
I hate the
The emotional.
Joy-Cons. They're the fucking worst.
I think the size of them would have been okay if the backs would have had something you could actually grab onto. Because they're so flat, it's so uncomfortable.
Fair.
I think the issue is that you might run into issues where if you have a design into it to make it easier to hold, now you have an issue where when you turn it on its side, it doesn't feel right anymore. So I just went for the route that was like, it'll feel okay either way.
Quote
Even though
unquote,
it's
okay.
not. Yeah,
I guess,
I think it's like the compromise for that controller. They had to figure out a way to make it not be atrocious to hold one of the intended ways.
Yeah.
The Wiimote felt right either way.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Then again, you don't attach the Wiimote to a screen, so
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're a psychopath.
yeah.
You could like tape it to
I
the
guess
Wii U
throwing
gamepad.
it into your TV screen is kind of like attaching it to a screen.
It's just a
Permanently.
permanent attachment. Yeah.
Just like, permanently.
Rin, actually, you mentioned something earlier that I don't think enough people appreciate. When you were talking about the 360 controller, you brought up the idea that it uses double A's. I see so many people talk shit about controllers having double A's, but I like the convenience where I can swap in a new set of rechargeables and I'm fully charged and I don't have to be plugged in.
And here's the thing, like eventually all those rechargeable battery packs that are in like the PS4 controllers and stuff and the PS3 controllers, just because they're the first examples I could think of, they're gonna die.
Yeah,
And
my
then
PS3
if you
controllers
can't
don't work.
Yeah, if you can't get a new battery put in, that controller's just e-waste now. My 360 controller, as long as it doesn't fall apart from age or use, I will be able to keep using it as long as I just make sure I don't leave batteries in there for 20 years.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I've got like high capacity double A's, and my controller goes for like ages. And yeah, I just swap in a new set, and I'm good to go. I don't have to plug in some fucking 10-foot cable to my console and have it awkwardly over my my ottoman. Like it just, I don't see why people prefer that. It doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, I guess the best compromise to that would just be, like, it works like it does now, but you can easily remove that battery pack and put in a new one. But
guess,
companies will never do that because it's way better for them just to make you buy a whole new controller if your battery fucked up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's so frustrating to me. Is that like, it feels like in a lot of ways, controllers are a good example where innovation is stifled for the sake of selling more units. It's like, well, why would we have easily user replaceable batteries when we can just seal it inside? And if someone doesn't have the know-how, guess they're buying another $90, $100 controller.
It's planned obsolescence, just like they do with like phones and shit.
Oh yeah,
My favorite.
drives me crazy. Like it makes me actually angry.
Oh yeah, no, it's garbage. I hate that. But
Right.
I don't think we're getting another AA controller anytime soon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, other than Xbox is the only one that keeps doing it. I guess third parties, yeah.
Is the Series X also AA?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I thought it wasn't.
Yeah, no, they
That's actually pretty
still
cool.
they still do it. And I prefer that because, like I was saying, I have I think 4 PS3 controllers, and 3 of them don't work. I literally have one controller that works. So yeah,
Like I will say that's one of the nice things about computer mice too. Like if you have a wireless mouse, like most of them, there's probably some exceptions, but a lot of them are just put in a AA and it's good for 6 months.
yeah.
Like I have my wireless mouse and I just replaced the battery for the first time and I got it back in June.
Actually,
So it was literally 6 months.
I saw a new gaming mouse recently where you put in I don't know if it's a AAA or AA, and it lasts for 2 to 3 years. That's fucking nuts.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. Actually, speaking of mice, like, what kind of mice do you guys have? Do you guys, are any of you psychopaths who just use the trackpad?
I have a Razer Naga Hex Trinity, I think. It's got like 3 different grips with different side buttons.
Yeah, I have some kind of Logitech gaming mouse. It has a few extra buttons. Although some of them don't work. I need to like go into the software and properly bind them in order to make them work, but whatever. Outside of that, I mean, it's fine. It basically has 2 extra buttons, and that's good enough for me.
Razer Death Adder.
Sorry.
Those are comfortable controllers. I mean,
Very
not
comfortable.
mouse,
2 little
controller,
side
but that's it.
buttons. All you
I
need.
had the
Make it easy.
original Death Adder when it first came out, and it was really comfortable.
But I think I'm going on. It must be 6, 7 years on this now.
I'm
Feels
surprised.
good.
Do you have double clicks on it?
Double clicks? What?
Like when you press your left click, does it sometimes double click?
Here, no.
Really, dude. My
Yeah.
Naga, after like 2 years, it started doing that, so I bought the new one.
Oh,
Oh shit! Yeah,
after having a bout of like 3 bad wireless mice, I went with a corded one, and she's been my baby ever since.
nice.
My ex-girlfriend gave me a mouse with like 6 buttons on the side, and I was like, nah. And I got one with like 12 fucking buttons on the side.
Oh yeah, you had the original Naga, the one that I used
Yeah.
to have. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really prefer my 12 button one. It's really nice for MMOs,
MMO
actually.
style ones, yeah.
It's really good for, yeah, I don't know. Like, it's a little weird at first, but like once you get the muscle memory, it's really easy to do pretty much everything on there. And it's useful for like every single game I've ever played on a PC, honestly.
I'm actually a bit of a curveball. I was rocking a Logitech G200 something for a while, but then I got carpal tunnel in my right hand. And like I've been dealing with issues with that since then, and I needed to be able to still work on videos and stuff. So I bought a Logitech M570, which is a trackball mouse. So you have the trackball on top and you control the cursor or whatever you're doing that way, and then you just have the left and right click. And like there is 2 other buttons on it, but like they're kind of off to the side and not very easy to use. But it's kind of funny. I was thinking like, oh yeah, I'll just go back and forth and I'll just use the trackball for video work and whatever daily use. And I'll go back to the other mouse for gaming. And I actually game on the trackball now. I've gotten so used to it that it's just second nature to me, and I can do just about everything I could do with like my older mouse with the trackball, and it's actually like really comfortable.
Anyway, what he's trying to say is that Ren is disabled and donate to our Patreon.
No, Ren's trying to say he likes playing with his balls.
It could be
Donate
both.
to our Patreon.
Yeah, so I can play with them more often instead of a job.
PS5 controller is fucking sick.
I haven't
Like,
used it yet.
I gotta hand it to him. Like the like the whole thing. The first thing I saw with like the Switch fucking Joy-Cons was like this giant like circle jerk about how good the motion in them is. Like the rumble on this PS5 controller in just like one game just like blows them the fuck out of the water. The triggers, those haptic feedback triggers are really cool. And the actual sound quality of the speaker of this fucking controller is also like actually kind of astounding. Apparently you can just like have voice chats coming out of it, and it's like solid quality, or like even entire game audio coming out of it instead of your TV, which is actually really cool for me because when I play like my consoles, I don't really have a sound system, so specifically for me that's really cool if I owned a PS5. But yeah, overall for like the one time I used it, it's really fucking good, and I could honestly see it whenever I get one, having it be my favorite controller ever.
Yeah, it does seem like a cool controller. My only problem with it is because the triggers, they adjust the resistance and they constantly move when you're holding it down and say you're shooting a gun.
Mhm.
All those moving parts are going to be the first thing to break on the controller.
Oh, probably.
But like
Probably,
when
yeah.
I imagine though the immersion that you get from it is probably really cool.
Oh man, you guys know a controller that sucks though? Do you guys remember at launch for the Xbox One, the controller they had that they brought out, where the triggers, you had to like, you were supposed to like roll your knuckles over it, and it was just kind of terrible.
Wait, what controller?
The Xbox One controller when the console first launched.
Like the console called Xbox One?
Yes.
What? I don't remember. It was,
How is this a thing?
what? I don't remember any other.
The controller at launch was really bad.
What?
Like, I distinctly remember playing at an EB Games with Sliv, and us both fucking hating it.
I didn't know that there was anything wrong with the controller. I didn't even know they changed anything.
Yeah, they did a revision about a year in, from what I remember. Because because of the position of the rear triggers, you had to have like your fingers, like your indexes near the bumpers, and then your middle fingers were supposed to kind of roll up onto the triggers. Because they weren't in a position where you could easily move your indexes down to comfortably anyway. It was awful.
It was really bad, and it was like weird because Microsoft's generally been pretty good at doing their controllers.
Yeah.
Like, even the Duke, people with big hands love that thing, so. But yeah, the Xbox One controller at launch was just miserable. I did not like it at all.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was different.
Yeah, it's like we haven't really had any hot take controllers yet.
Well, yeah. I think the modern controller is just pretty good. There's obviously some room for improvement, but it's not like some really old controller is like miles better than any of the modern ones, I don't think.
Yeah, because we've gotten to the point where, aside from innovative features, there's a standard that's been set that you can't really fuck up too bad.
Yeah, I guess it's not the 90s anymore where everyone was trying to figure out how to make a control stick work.
Yeah, or like that one fucking controller for, what was it? The original Warhawk on the PS1 with that stupid controller that you strap to your hand and fucking with motion controls.
Oh man, what was that game for the Xbox? The original Xbox? Mac
Steel
Warriors?
Battalion?
Yeah, Steel Battalion with the
That's
friggin'
fucking-
like battle station of a controller.
Dude, my neighbor had that shit. We used to play it every day.
There are freaking meetups, like conventions, where people get together and they all play it.
Yeah, that controller legit was really cool.
I really want to use one day. That would be so cool.
Yeah, I would actually like to play that game again with that controller. It was fucking nuts. Yeah, I see it with the pedals and everything. It was cool. It was really expensive from what I remember, but it was cool.
Oh, it was really expensive then. It's even more expensive now. I think they go on eBay for like, it must be over $1,000 now. Like,
229 Canadian.
oh, it's not actually too bad. All things considered, like, it's still more than I would pay for it, but it's not as bad as I thought it was.
I feel like that's not too far off from how much it was with the game, because I think that was like, I could be wrong, but I think it was like $200 or some shit.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised it's that cheap. I thought it was way higher.
Yeah.
And it's local.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is so cool, though. Like,
Yeah, it was legitimately cool to use. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing because there's so many different buttons and I like ejected and shit. I didn't really understand, but it was really cool.
oh yeah, because, like, you're literally piloting a mech.
Yeah, and I love that the eject literally had the fucking window over it, just like a real one.
Oh, that's sick. Oh man, that's definitely like up there in terms of controllers I want to use one day. Like right up there with the Wu-Tang PS1 controller.
You know, it's a shame is that when they came out with the new Steel Battalion, it was based around the worst controller ever, the fucking Kinect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how you go from that thing to fucking like finger guns and little gestures.
Yeah, does the Kinect even qualify as a controller? I guess you control
I guess
stuff
you
with
are
it,
the controller.
but it's terrible.
Oh, but I hate myself.
Well, yeah.
Don't worry,
I'm the worst controller. Maybe the controllers were the friends we made along the way.
Oh, actually, hold. You sent that picture. I'm gonna show you the worst controller ever.
That is the one controller I really want to play with.
I'm gonna give someone.
You brought up an image. Now you have to put the image in the podcast. You got to put it on screen.
I fucking hate myself.
The classic Resident Evil 4 chainsaw controller. For the GameCube.
Yeah,
The Game and Watch.
I am going to give someone a Valentine's Day card this year, and it's just going to be like, you're my player 2 controller, and it's just like the friggin' like a Mad Catz N64 controller, and then I'll just get like punched.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you give that to somebody you really fucking hate, huh?
Yeah. Nah, you give it to someone you love. If they can't take it, then they're not worth it, you know? I'm trying to say I can handle them at their Mad Cat's worst.
I guess this is where we remind the audience that Rin is single.
Yeah.
Video game controllers, what's up with that?
Dude, I don't think anyone has to take any guesses. I am in a podcast about video game controllers.
You know, there's probably a wine-based controller.
Oh, maybe. Oh, I mean, there's like fishing controllers, if that counts.
Yeah.
Like, there's the N64 fishing rod controller, which I think is the funniest thing ever.
Now, is the Bop It a controller?
No.
Oh my god, let's end this now, please, before we talk about fucking Bop It.
Are you
Bop
sure?
It.
Twist it.
No.
Yeah, but you're playing a game and you're following the instructions by using a controller.
But you can't control more than one game. By that logic, the freaking Tiger Electronics portables were like their own consoles.
Well, you're not wrong. Technically, they're micro consoles. Or are they mini consoles?
This conversation is pain.
Yeah, they're neither. They're just garbage. So yeah.
I had Echo the Dolphin.
Congratulations!
You know how good an Echo the
so
Dolphin
much.
Tiger Electronics game is?
Probably just
No.
as bad as the actual one.
It's not good. And I like Echo the Dolphin.
Take us out.
Please.
Echo, Echo, Echo. The Dolphin.
Why am I laughing so much at Echo the Dolphin?
You know what? I take it back. We do need a cap on podcasts. I take back everything I said. This is
I don't even
horrible.
Okay, I don't even think we've been going that long.
No, it has been under an hour.
Yeah, actually.
I just don't think there's much more to talk about here.
Yeah.
Why do you think I'm like reaching for jokes and actually having them land for once?
No,
Dude, I was
Dude,
literally going to ask about like older controllers because that seems to be where there's more room for discussion.
Okay.
Okay,
Ask about
ask a
controllers.
fucking question, motherfucker.
Okay, SNES or Genesis controller?
I have no opinion.
Well,
I
I
am-
don't remember the Genesis controller. Hold on.
Damn, only two of us here. I've actually used both, I think.
Honestly, I have used both, and I'm actually a bigger fan of the SNES controller. I
I've
find that
used
the
them because my cousin had one.
I find the Sega Genesis controller to be the buttons on it to be a little bit too mushy for me.
I actually prefer the Genesis controller. I think that
I was gonna say because it's got the bumpers and it's got 6 face buttons. You can do a lot more with it.
there are no bumpers on the Genesis controller.
Oh, this is an 8-bit Do controller that looks just like it. That's why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just 3 top buttons unless you had the 6 button.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay.
And then
The
you had to
the
hit,
SNES had
like,
bumpers.
select to switch between punch and kick and shit and fighting games.
Fuck
and
this
stuff.
piece of shit. All right, let's just go
Yeah.
back to.
Yeah, take it all back. Take it all back.
This looks way less interesting now that I see the actual one.
I actually really like
down.
it though. It is a bulky boy.
Bulky boy. Have you ever used the Duke from fucking the original Xbox? 'Cause that's a bulky boy.
Oh man, a good friend of the channel actually. He lives and dies by the Duke. He
It was a
loves
good
that stupid
controller.
thing.
You just needed big hands.
Yeah, as long as you got big hands, it's like you know what they say about people with big hands. They like the Duke. I'll show myself out. That was really bad. Yeah, I never got the hate for the Duke personally. I definitely prefer the later revision controller, but I never understood why people were ragging on it so much.
Yeah, I never thought it was that big of a deal. The only thing I didn't like was the black and white buttons to the side of, like, underneath the face buttons was kind of weird.
Yeah, I liked them above the face buttons. It was better placement.
Yeah.
Also, here's a weird one. I have heard more and more people complain that NES controllers hurt their hands. Like
NES controllers?
the NES controller. Like it's a rectangle, but like I
No.
keep hearing people moan and whine about, oh, like it digs into my hands when I play for any longer than a few minutes.
Okay, now let me explain this. These people are young, and they are weak, because they did not start with nice, like, curvature in their controllers. No, they can't go back to anything boxy. They didn't learn not to squeeze the shit out of their controller like they were trying to beat off in 2 seconds. That's their problem. They're squeezing. The games don't like it when you squeeze, huh? And neither do I.
The fuck did you just say?
Yeah. What the fuck was that?
I don't know. I was trying to say that modern gamers, these little shits, never grew up with a controller that was square, so they only grew up learning how to like grip their controller harder than it would be to break a brick. And that's why they're getting holes in their hands. They're complaining.
I don't think that they're little bitches, though. I just try to figure out where it comes from.
They're just bitching. They don't know how to hold a square.
Okay.
Kids in
well,
their newfangled circles.
In defense of Zoomers, I guess. I mean, I could see how like playing a really tough NES game for like extended periods of time and like sweating a lot would make that controller more and more difficult to grip.
Yeah,
because
it's
a
not
lot of those
grip,
NES
it's about
games
it
are
digging into your hand.
yeah, but like a lot of NES controllers are just like, or rather, a lot of NES games are just generally a lot more difficult than what we have nowadays. So I don't know. I don't necessarily find them a problem myself, but I could see how like their shape and their design would be more likely to dig into your hands than something that's well rounded,
I guess, yeah.
especially for like I don't know, a 5-hour gaming session or something ridiculous like that.
5 hour ridiculous. Nothing. Fuck you.
Feels ridiculous when it's the NES for some reason. I don't know.
I think the only time you're allowed to complain about controllers is if you just play Kirby Tilt and Tumble with a GameCube.
Yeah, you're right.
Then you're allowed to complain all day long. Why did Nintendo design it like this? Atari was pretty bad for them. They couldn't quite get out of the mindset of the 2600.
Yeah.
And the control
So-
stick is iconic, you know?
The joystick is
No.
iconic, but it's not like the best thing to control a game ever with. It's a little bit too stiff.
Of course.
Yeah, like if you're playing a game on your TV, it doesn't make sense to try to emulate the arcade experience. Like, literally.
I think that nowadays, like, you can emulate an arcade experience one-to-one. The arcade sticks are really, really good, and, like, some people prefer them for playing fighting games, especially.
Nowadays, yeah, but I mean at the time, it wasn't that easy to actually emulate it properly without
I mean,
the
yeah.
controller being a piece of shit.
Yeah, you'd see a lot of third-party joysticks come out for a while, though. I think a lot of people just got so used to it, I guess, that it stuck around
Yeah.
less than it was the best way to play a game. Because, like, I even remember growing up, like, you could still buy a joystick at the store, like, at a electronics store, for, like, into the early 2000s.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild that, like, people were still buying them, and, like, some still exist because of flight sticks and stuff, but, like, I'm talking about, like, just, like, oh, yeah, up your game, like, gamer lingo all over it. Yeah, you see, like, ones marketed for, like, teens and stuff, and it didn't make sense because I don't remember anyone that was like, oh, yeah, I bought a joystick for my games. No one was playing, like, freaking Halo with a joystick. Man, it's so cool to, like, look back, though. Occasionally you'll see some weird stuff people did. A lot of promotional controllers just exist like that. Chainsaw one. I mentioned the Wu-Tang PlayStation controller earlier, which I'm just blown away exists to this day. You get some really wacky designs for the like player 2 controller, so you know your third party controller you got because the official ones are way too goddamn expensive.
I don't want to talk about it too much, but I feel like if we're talking about controllers, um, if you're watching this and you don't know what the Xbox adaptive controller is, you should probably look that up because that's probably the biggest innovation in controllers in a long time.
Oh, that's
Actually, no.
like that's
Yeah.
the controllers designed for people who have physical disabilities, right?
Yeah, it's basically like a hub where you can connect like switches and joysticks and different things, and you can map everything to different um, buttons on an Xbox controller, so that anyone with any kind of disability can find a way to still play and actually enjoy games. Like that's really fucking cool.
Yeah, I find that so interesting and so like actual like amazing that we see controllers like that coming out because I don't think for a long time I know you'd occasionally hear like a story about someone who plays games and like they have to with like they're using a regular controller but with like their teeth or something.
Yeah,
So it's so cool to see that there's now controllers made with accessibility in mind so that way people don't have to like suffer to enjoy what they want to enjoy.
yeah. I've seen some people complain because it's expensive, but it kind of makes sense considering how much it can do, and because it's a niche product, it's going to be really expensive to make, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, you can't do a massive print run of them like in a fit like a regular controller. You can't. Every single situation is going to be slightly different, so it all like they have to probably be basically custom made
That's
to an
pretty cool.
extent. I would have to assume.
The thing itself is mostly a hub, but it's got so much functionality in it, and because you don't sell too many, they make them in really small quantities, so
Yeah,
it raises the price. But yeah, it's a really cool controller. I just wanted to bring that up.
there's actually because there's kind of like a cross between that and arcade sticks actually, where there are some controllers out there, and there's actually popular with some Smash Bros. Players who have issues with their hands, where everything is mapped to just a micro switch button on a big board, and some people use that as a accessibility method, which I think is pretty
Oh,
cool.
yeah, that is cool.
I can't remember the name of the really popular one, but there are a couple that are really well loved by people who need to use them or decide to use them because they have like health issues. Occasionally, you'll see like other controllers that are just weird. I've seen a couple that had like big buttons for people who are slightly visually impaired. Although for some reason, every time I think of that, I think of the freaking giant-sized TV remote that I swear everyone knows at least like one elderly person that has it.
Dude, it was like when we still had like when people used to have the phones, like not just cell phones. And there was these ones that they would make for old people where the buttons were like the size of a fucking toonie.
Oh yeah, there's
It's so
actually like there's computer keyboards like that
really.
with giant font, like it's bright yellow black font, so that way you can easily read it. Big keys.
Jeez.
Because like some people who have vision problems need to be able to still send an email out about Nan's banana bread recipe or whatever. Gotta get it out there to the grandkids for St. Patrick's. I don't fucking know.
Well, to be fair, Nan's banana bread's probably really good.
Yeah, so you gotta get the recipe out, like gotta type it. Otherwise, you're sending it by mail. And, she doesn't want the freaking
The deets to get out.
the details to get out that she's like putting cocaine in the banana bread.
Damn, Nan.
I don't
You
know.
bussin'. Did I use that word right? I don't know. I'm hip, kids.
Yeah, I'm glad that we're past the point of just fucking dog shit controllers like we used to have. Like before, if you bought third party, you could just assume it was terrible. Whereas now, a lot of the third parties are making pretty solid controllers.
Oh yeah, like Hori is really, really good. There are some cases where they're making on par with the first party controllers and just like some features really missing.
Yeah, and 8-bit Dude makes a lot of really great controllers. Like there's
Oh, yeah.
SNES ones and shit. Are pretty
The
cool.
SN30 Pro, yeah. I think the controllers are awesome. And I had Power A make some decent stuff too.
Yeah.
There are a lot of valid there's still crap if you look for it. But there are a lot of very valid options now if you're trying to get a decent controller on a budget. Especially if you're willing to make sacrifices, because if you're willing to sacrifice features or like you happen to game close to your console so you can have a corded controller,
Yeah.
you can
like,
actually
on
save a
the
decent chunk of change.
On the Switch, for example, like you're probably not going to have HD rumble, but if you just wanted a pro style controller, who cares?
Until you start thinking about it, you don't remember how bad some controllers just were that we used when we were growing up and stuff.
Yeah, it was like a minefield if you were buying third-party shit, because there was like hardly anything good.
Oh yeah, I remember we had an N64 controller where the literal, like, the tip of the control stick just snapped off, and it was a Mad Catz?
Yeah,
Or
that
like
sounds about right.
Or like a Turbo whatever the heck from some random company. Man. Or there are a lot of, like, crappy Genesis ones. There's a Genesis controller that had a touchpad instead of a D-pad.
A touchpad?
It was like a touchpad, and it was like this yellow touchpad, and you had to like control it by pressing down on this touchpad. It is really weird.
Yeah, that sounds so weird, because that would be an old touchpad, so that probably sucked.
Probably. I've heard bad things about it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Would you believe? Actually, Blast from the Past, you used to be able to buy them, and it was just like an NES style controller with like AV out, and it would just have a bunch of random bootleg games on it. And what's crazy is things haven't changed that much. There are a lot of, like, the bootleg consoles coming out now, they're a little bit, I don't want to say more refined, but I freaking have had, like, bath toys that were more durable plastic than freaking... I don't know why I picked a bath toy as, like, the example. I can't think of anything that's made out of really cheap plastic because of how cheap the plastic was.
Those little Easter eggs that are like made of plastic that you have to pop out.
Yeah, that's literally what it felt like. It felt like one of those Easter eggs.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think we've let this get a little bit away from us. I'm sorry, I've enjoyed talking about controllers a little bit too much.
Yeah, most people have been pretty quiet, so yeah.
Yeah, because
Is
I
an
think
egg timer a controller?
It
It controls when you're going to go to the oven.
It controls time. All right, we've had a fun time, but we need to get back in control of our lives, so we're gonna get out of here. But if you enjoyed watching, you can consider checking us out on Twitter at THNDRCLUB, or checking out our Twitch at twitch.tv/ThunderClub, or you could consider, giving the old subscribe. That's an action that's under your control, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, I've been Ren, and with me has been Kaznarius.
The short form of ThunderClub is THC, and when you consider that, and consider Sliv's actions, it all kind of makes sense.
Sliv?
Quick, get out of here before I lose control. I'm gonna activate super sliver mode.
Okay, we gotta hurry this up. The pork chopper?
See you later.
As always, the unnamed guest.
See ya.
Okay, we're out of here, bye.
Ah!